I'm Nima Rajan. Two of the three main federal party leaders were campaigning in Ontario today. A day after Liberal leader Justin Trudeau made an announcement in Hamilton, Conservative leader Erin O'Toole made a stop in the same city talking about mental health. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh was in Windsor, where he delivered an announcement on telecommunications costs, and Mr. Trudeau was in Surrey, BC, before meeting with a local family to discuss housing. Election promises continued to be made yesterday. Liberal leader Justin Trudeau promised to introduce a tax-free first home savings account that would let anyone under 40 save up to $40,000 toward their first home and withdraw it tax-free. Conservative leader Erin O'Toole unveiled a plan to block corporate executives from paying themselves bonuses while their companies are restructuring unless the pension plan is fully funded. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh flagged the high rates of COVID-19 deaths in for-profit long-term care homes as he promised to take the profit out of the sector. Meanwhile, there were sharply differing points of view at the latest Group of Seven virtual get-together. U.S. President Joe Biden is standing firm on his plan to wrap up American military operations in Afghanistan next Tuesday. This despite pressure from Canada, the U.K., and other G7 leaders. After the meeting, Prime Minister Trudeau said Canada's commitment to Afghanistan doesn't end with the U.S. deadline. Some provinces are bringing in mandatory mask requirements as Delta variant infections rise. Quebec elementary and high school students across 9 regions will have to wear masks indoors when classes resume. Manitoba is bringing back a mask mandate for all indoor public places, including schools. And BC is bringing back masks in all indoor public spaces, such as malls, grocery stores, and on transit. The Northwest Territories has confirmed its first death related to COVID-19. Chief Public Health Officer Dr. Cami Candola says the person died from the infection late on Monday. The death comes as the territory is experiencing its worst outbreak since the beginning of the pandemic, with 219 active cases across 8 communities. A Manitoba legislature member has been stripped of his role as caucus whip for the governing Progressive Conservatives. The Tory caucus says Andrew Micklefield was asked to step down after publicly backing former Health Minister Heather Stephenson's bid for the party's leadership. A written statement from the caucus office says party whips and people with similar caucus duties are expected to remain neutral in leadership contests to avoid potential conflicts of interest. The Saskatchewan Teachers Federation wants mandatory COVID-19 vaccination for eligible students and staff. Federation President Patrick Mays wants COVID-19 vaccinations to be a condition of employment for teachers that is mandated by the province. Toronto's police union says it opposes a new mandatory vaccine policy that will require all staff to provide proof of their immunization status by September 13th. Police Association President John Reid says the policy was announced with no documentation procedures or orders in place to support it. Yesterday's announcement came after stricter immunization requirements were adopted across a variety of employment sectors, including health, education, and public service jobs. Nova Scotian Lorne Grabher has lost his latest bid to overturn the province's decision to revoke his personalized license plate bearing his surname Grabher. The Nova Scotia Court of Appeal has upheld a lower court ruling that found personalized license plates are not a location where freedom of expression applies. The plate was revoked in 2016 after a complaint that it promoted hatred toward women. An alliance of New Brunswick business groups is calling on political parties to present a clear plan to drive economic recovery and post-pandemic growth. New Brunswick Business Council CEO Alex LeBlanc released the group's policy priorities yesterday. These include efforts to grow the labor force. The group is also calling for an Atlantic investment tax credit that would encourage interprovincial investments in startups, exporters, and small and medium-sized businesses. TikTok users will soon be able to buy stuff directly through the short videos on the app, thanks to a Canadian e-commerce company. Shopify says businesses will be able to add a shopping tab to their TikTok profiles to create a mini storefront that links directly to their online store for checkout. And a recall is being issued for a salad-making kit over the possibility of a listeria contamination. Curation Foods is recalling 340-gram packages of its Eat Smart brand Asian Sesame Chopped Salad Kit with a best-before date of August 24th. The Canadian Food Inspection Agency says the salad kits were sold in Ontario and possibly nationally. All right, stay with us as we look into housing affordability in Canada and what parties are willing to do to help young Canadians enter the real estate market. We'll have our business and finance segment with Brendan Caldwell from Caldwell Securities coming up next. That and, of course, more news from around the world only on Forum Daily. So stay with us. We'll be right back after these short messages. We'll see you all soon. As the federal campaign tour continues ahead of the September 20th election, the federal Liberals have made an election promise aimed at helping young people buy a home. A re-elected Liberal government would help renters become homeowners through $1 billion in loans and grants. The Liberals say their plan would allow Canadians under 40 to save up to $40,000 toward their first home. However, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh is dismissing Liberal leader Justin Trudeau's plan to make it easier to buy a home across the country. Mr. Singh says Mr. Trudeau has failed to do anything to make housing more affordable during his entire time in office. The Liberals 4 years ago unveiled a housing strategy designed to boost supply and help drive down costs for families. Well, joining us now to talk more on housing affordability in Canada is Mr. Brendan Caldwell, Director of Caldwell Securities Limited. Brendan, always great having you on Forum Daily. Welcome back.
Thank you. Great to be here, Nima.
So we've got a big topic on the docket today, housing affordability. It's also a huge election topic right now, so let's get into it. What are some ways that young people can build savings to purchase their first home?
Well, the best, most simple, straightforward way is to do a monthly contribution plan. Put just a little bit, such that you can't afford it, aside into some sort of savings. Just not that you can't afford it, but just so you begin to notice it. Whether it's $100, $200, $500, $1,000 a month, whatever it is that you slightly can't afford, into a savings account for this purpose. Now, there are these plans being batted around, but there's already a perfectly good plan called a tax-free savings account that one can use to accumulate money tax-free to the tune of $5,500 a year. So I think that is a good way to start. If it's $500 a month people are putting away, then that'll get you where you're going eventually.
And turning to some of the campaign promises around this, we know Justin Trudeau is promising to tackle housing affordability if they're re-elected. They're going to unlock TFSAs for first-time buyers. But as you said, we already have a similar program. We've got the RRSP system. So can you explain this for our viewers?
Well, sure. You can take money out of your RSP as a first-time home buyer. That is to say, if you haven't bought a house in the last 5 years, you're deemed a first-time home buyer, and you can take a certain amount of money, both you and your partner, out of your RSP, as long as you repay it over a period of time, I think 15 years. But, it's fine. It's already a system that works. It's not a question of the government needing to micromanage and engineer a new savings program. I don't even think it's necessarily a federal issue at all, because, one thing we have a great deal of is space in this country. If the old world is about history, we are very much about geography. So I think at a more local, both provincial and municipal level, the affordability of housing is probably more effectively dealt with at those levels. So yes, there are plans. There is a TFSA that already exists. You can put money in, take money out, no tax savings to put it in, no tax consequences to take it out. You can use the RSP where you save money putting it in, and you can no tax consequences taking it out as long as you pay it back. Even as I'm speaking, doesn't it sound complicated? Another program isn't going to make it easier for people who can't buy a home in Toronto, because the anything they even consider is deep in the six figures or over $1 million. It's a tricky business for the federal government to sort of wade in there with these fairly blunt instruments to think they can make a huge difference.
And talking about housing prices, I want to jump to a potentially difficult question to answer, but this is the question on a lot of people's minds right now, millennials in particular. They're interested in knowing whether housing prices will continue to go up, or if they might freeze at some point, or even go down at some point. So what are your thoughts on this, Brendan?
Well, I said to a younger person at the beginning of the COVID crisis, if COVID doesn't knock the stuffings out of the specifically Toronto real estate market, but of the real estate market in general, I'm not sure anything ever will. Now, that having been said, eventually the cure for high prices is ultimately high prices. I'm old enough to just remember when the market stopped on a given day, the housing market stopped on a given day in 1989, cratered, and didn't start to recover for another 5 or 6 years, and took a good decade to get back up to where it had been before. The time it had done that previously was, well, quite a bit of distance in the past. So housing prices tend to work on generational swings. And I think it may be a while before, unless there's some other event, something new, something you haven't anticipated that really knocks the stuffings out of it. I think it'll be a while before you actually see housing prices go down. Thank you.
All right, Brendan, just about 30 seconds left, but really quickly, what about remote work, which has been really apparent during the pandemic? Could young people utilize that to live somewhere more affordable?
Well, yes, and I think a lot of people are doing that. There's no longer a need to be where I'm sitting right now in downtown Toronto to do most work. So what I think, though, in the short term that's causing is prices to go up in remoter areas. I mean, remote when you're talking, sitting at King and Bay, anything's remote.
Housing affordability remains a top issue for many Canadian voters, and the main federal parties are responding. The Liberals recently announced they would build, preserve, or repair 1.4 million homes over 4 years. They also promised to double the first-time home buyers tax credit, create a rent-to-own program, and launch a home buyers bill of rights. The Conservatives announced a plan to build 1 million homes over 3 years. This while they promised to convert 15% of federal government property into housing and bar foreign investors from buying a house in Canada for the next 2 years. The NDP announced their plan to build 500,000 affordable homes over the next 10 years. They also promise a 20% foreign home buyers tax on non-Canadian citizens or permanent residents. This while they are also proposing to create a 30-year mortgage insured by CMHC. But are these measures enough? With us now is Tony Clement, the host of Boom and Bust. Tony, great having you back on Forum Daily in studio today.
It's great to be here.
Now, housing affordability is a huge topic right now on the campaign trail. What do we know so far about the party promises regarding this issue?
Well, it looks like each party is promising something and trying to be as big as possible because I think they understand that Canadians are very concerned about this issue. It affects them in their daily lives. As you mentioned, a lot of the party's policies, the Conservatives, the Liberals, NDP, focus on a number, 500,000 new homes, 1 million new homes, 1.4 million. It's always around those large numbers. They're using a number of different approaches. The Conservatives, as you mentioned, have this 2-year ban on foreigners purchasing property that is not used for them. It's just used for investment purposes, takes housing stock out of the economy, so they're zeroing in on that. But they also want to use federal infrastructure money for transit to also focus new home building in transit corridors, as an example. Liberals, as you mentioned, they've got a new rent-to-own program, $1 billion in loans and grants, decrease mortgage insurance from CMHC, which increases the affordability of homes. And the NDP as well want to double tax credits, waive HST, and so on. So they have different approaches, Nima, but it's all designed to hit taxpayers and Canadians where their concerns are, which is housing affordability.
And another thing adding to this housing affordability crisis is inflation, Tony. We hit a record high of 3.7% in July. So how are the parties going to address this in particular? Well,
they're not doing it directly. Mr. Trudeau famously said on the campaign trail that he's not very concerned, doesn't really turn his mind to monetary policy, which is in fact what inflation is. So we know that he's not really focused on that. The other parties aren't really focused on it either. What they're focused on is ways to bring new jobs, a new economic growth to the economy, and people will be able to afford goods and services if they've got a new or a better job. I think that's how they're looking at that issue.
And one of the solutions being thrown out there is banning foreign ownership or taxing it heavily. So would this make a difference, Tony?
I think it would. Certainly British Columbia has experimented with this provincially. And I think that there is a sense amongst the Canadian public that it's just not right that the foreigners are coming in, snapping up homes, and that, of course, reduces the stock of homes available for Canadians and jacks up the prices. That's that's part of what's happening. So anything that increases the housing stock, reduces the demand, I think would be seen as Canadians as part of the solution.
All right, Tony, just over a minute left, but let's get into jobs. So these rising home costs and inflations are outstripping wage increases in Canada. So how can the next Canadian government increase the number of high-paying jobs in Canada?
Yeah, this is going to be a focus of the campaign for sure. The Conservative Party is really focused on helping small businesses get back into it after this COVID lockdown situation for the past year and a half. So they're looking at small business to do that. Of course, the Liberals have been in power. They've looked at individual payments to individual Canadians as the approach. Expensive, but it does preserve people for a time anyway. And the NDP want to do a bit of both. So I'm sure those issues are going to be well debated in the campaign trail.
All right, Tony, just about a minute left, but what sort of industries can provide good, high-paying jobs in Canada that our parties should look into?
Well, manufacturing for sure. That's been a traditional place. The Conservative Party under Erin O'Toole has looked at the gig economy, protecting those workers a little bit better, because that's part of our economy as well. These workers that are kind of on the edge, not really having a lot of wages and benefits. And of course, you want to look at new industries as well. So how can we have an innovative economy? These are things that I think also will be debated in the campaign.
All right, Tony, always great having you on Forum Daily. Thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you.
All right, stay tuned. When we get back, we take a look at stories from around the world. The U.S. House of Representatives has passed a multi-trillion-dollar bill, and meanwhile, the president of the Philippines is confirming that he will run for vice president next year. These stories and more news from around the world coming up next. Stay with us. U.S. House Democratic leaders have compromised with moderates and pushed President Joe Biden's multi-trillion-dollar budget blueprint over a key hurdle. Mr. Biden praised Tuesday's 220 to 212 vote as a step toward truly investing in the American people. A band of moderate lawmakers had been threatening to withhold their support for the $3.5 billion or trillion-dollar plan. They were demanding that the House first approve a $1 trillion public works package that has already passed the Senate. Poland says it has halted airlift evacuations from Afghanistan as America's August 31st deadline looms. A deputy foreign minister said Wednesday that a group taken from Kabul and now in Uzbekistan was the last evacuated by Poland. Marcin Shejdak cited safety concerns as a main factor. Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte has confirmed he will run for vice president next year in what critics say is an attempt to get around the Constitution. The 76-year-old said he would run to continue the crusade. He might run alongside his daughter, Sarah, who is the mayor of Davao. The 1987 Constitution limits presidents to a single 6-year term. Japan has expanded its coronavirus state of emergency for the second week in a row. It is adding 8 more prefectures as a surge of infections fueled by the Delta variant strains the country's healthcare system. The government last week extended the state of emergency until September 12th. They also expanded the areas covered to 13 prefectures from 6, including Tokyo. 33 of Japan's 47 prefectures are now under some type of emergency measures. Federal officials are taking another look at the safety climate inside aircraft maker Boeing. The Federal Aviation Administration says 35% of people in a key engineering unit have raised concerns about their ability to work independently of the company and communicate with safety regulators. The FAA says it is looking more closely at the situation. Syria's state news agency says an oil spill caused by leakage from a power plant inside one of Syria's oil refineries is spreading along the coast of the Mediterranean country. Sana reported on Wednesday that the oil spill reached the coastal town of Jibal. It's about 20 kilometers north of the refinery in the town of Banyas. Satellite images from Planet Labs Incorporated show what appears to be a massive 19-kilometer-long oil spill from the Banyas plant. A Syrian official blames cracks in one of the fuel tankers at the station. An insurance industry group says that floods in western Germany last month likely caused insured damage worth about 7 billion euros, or roughly $10.3 billion. More than 180 people died in Germany, and hundreds more were injured in the July 14th to 15th floods, which also claimed lives in neighboring Belgium. The German government has agreed to provide 30 billion euros, or just over $14.8 billion, to help rebuild regions hit by the floods. Morocco's foreign ministry said the country regrets the completely unjustified decision of neighboring Algeria to break off diplomatic relations. Algeria formally announced the decision on Tuesday and cited a series of alleged hostile acts. Morocco's foreign ministry said in a statement released early Wednesday that the move was expected in view of the logic of escalation observed in recent weeks. The Minnesota Supreme Court has declined to hear an appeal by opponents of Enbridge Energy's Line 3 oil pipeline. This will permit a decision by independent regulators to allow construction to proceed. The state's highest court declined Tuesday to take the case, effectively affirming a decision in June by the Minnesota Court of Appeals. Line 3 opponents are holding a series of events at the state capitol this week, including a march and rally on Wednesday. New York Governor Kathy Hochul is beginning her term in office with plenty of challenges. When Governor Hochul took over Tuesday for resigned Governor Andrew Cuomo, she became the 9th woman currently serving as governor. That ties the previous record, first set in 2004, then matched in 2007 and 2019. Australian cyclist Paige Greco has earned the first gold medal of the Tokyo Paralympics. She won the 3,000-meter pursuit on the track at the Velodrome. Wang Xiaomei of China was second, and bronze went to Denise Schindler of Germany. It was the first of 24 gold medals up for grabs as the Paralympics got underway. And in northern Nigerian city of Kano, teenage girls are learning the ins and outs of robotics, computing, and other STEM subjects, challenging many expectations and stereotypes. Through this Kibera NGO initiative, founder Hadiza Garbati hopes to empower young women to raise their aspirations. This is done through teaching them the skills they need to start their own small businesses or enroll in university. Since its inception, Kibera has educated 200 young girls, and Ms. Garbati looks to expand the initiative to other Nigerian cities. All right, I'm Nima Rajan, and that'll do it for your look at national and international news for today. For more news on demand, you could always visit our website, thenewsforum.ca, or follow us on social media. I'm Nima Rajan, and this has been Forum Daily.